Good evening. Seeing as the time is upon us and we do have a quorum tonight, I would like to start the meeting and call to order. Can I have a roll call, please? Here. Present.
Here. Present.
Mr. Carlin is here. We didn't say yes, but I'm here.
Please stand for the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You know my nephew, Ben Trout? Yeah. Now you're a senior, right?
At this point in time, we'd like to take a moment of silence and please keep the following individuals who have passed away in your thoughts and prayers. Barbara Jean Hargrove, retired classroom aide from Coxhill and Sullivan Schools. Mary Jean Kempenar, mother of Sharon Carter, Newport Partnerships of Families, and grandmother of Stephanie Birdie. Gloria Burcroft, mother-in-law of Mary Burcroft, Newport Public School paraeducator. Ward Abus Samra, grandfather of Catherine Hurst, Newport Public School speech language pathologist, and Horace M. Browner, the grandfather of Michael Browner, TMS teacher. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. At this point in time, we come to the public comments section of the evening, and what we do is any person desiring to address the public school concerning an issue that is not on the committee's docket shall complete the written request prior to the start of the meeting. If it is on the docket, obviously you'll have an opportunity to speak when the item comes up. We'll allow that. So is there anybody signed up this evening for public comment? For an agenda item? Okay. Whoever was signed up for that agenda item, when that agenda item comes up, please just make yourself known. Thank you very much. All right, we have our student council update this evening, and over here to my right is Ajane Green. Miss Ajane Green, fill us in.
Hello, my name is Ajane Green. I'm a senior at Rogers High School. I'm also the class president. For sports, all fall sports are over except for football, and the last game is on Thanksgiving at 10 a.m. And all winter sports start Monday after Thanksgiving. For fundraisers, we have one coming up at 99 next Tuesday, and for December we also have one from IHOP. And that's about it.
That's it. Excellent. Nice job. Short and sweet. You stay up here and run the rest of the meeting? you can step down if you'd like. Thank you, dear. Next item on the agenda for student activities is a School USA student, sophomore Jennifer Ferreira, second year cosmetology student, holds a position of Skills USA state officer and is serving as state secretary. Jennifer will be introduced to the committee and explain some of her work with Skills USA. Jennifer, come on up.
Good evening. I am Jennifer Ferreira, and I study cosmetology here at the Newport Area Career and Technical Center. I am the state officer for Skills USA Rhode Island, and I serve as the state secretary. Skills USA is a national organization that focuses on career and technical education with both a leadership and a competitive side. Being a state officer, I participate in the leadership side and have gained important skills in traveling to nationals in Kentucky, visiting senators in Washington, D.C. to speak about the impact Perkins funding has on career and technical education, and working with my team at the state level. These experiences has prepared me and put me a foot ahead of my peers to be job ready day one. One of my goals as a state officer is to advocate for career and technical education and to try to build an active chapter within the Newport Area Career and Technical Center. Thank you.
Thanks for representing us so well. We come to the action item portion of the agenda this evening, and the first one was action item 4.1, request for approval of change order request, and this had to do with some career and technical accessibility alterations. This was brought to us by the administration. Unfortunately, Mr. Howard could not make it today. He had a medical issue that he had to tend to, but essentially the Superintendent of Facilities Management, which is Mr. Howard, has received an additional change order for the career tech. The total increase of the cost of the project is $264. At the end of the day, it was one less than 1/10 of 1% of an overage of the overall contract, and I want to commend Mr. Harrop for keeping that contract as tight as possible. The recommendation would be to approve this. Is there a second? Any discussion on the item? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The next item would be a request for approval of agreement between Newport Public Schools and District Management Group. This was by the administration. Superintendent Germain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In front of you today, there's a proposal from District Management Group from Boston. We have been consulting with them about, talking to them about scheduling and trying to schedule our middle school and high school with more efficiency and working on schedules. This opportunity, the Rhode Island Foundation presented us with a grant in order to do this of $40,000, and this work is aligned to our strategic plan. It will involve teachers and the principals as well as district leadership in order to coordinate and align the schedules and the curriculum we offer in the way in which the schools want to do this. So this is one of 2 years. The first year is for $40,000, and the second follow-up, if the administration, teachers, and the schools are happy, they will continue for a second year to help with the scheduling. It also looks into fiduciary controls, as well as if we're expending our money appropriately.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
Motion's been made by Ms. Sylvia, second by Ms. Boland. Any discussion on the item? I have a couple of questions for the superintendent. Superintendent, you stated that there was scheduling involved. How intense or how in-depth will the scheduling be? And you said it would be at both Thompson and Rogers High School. So will they be making suggestions that we will then have to adopt and adhere to? And when will all of this start?
This would, the group would like to start in November or in December, depending upon the approval of the committee. And they would work with the teachers and the principals. And what they would do is speak to teachers and principals about what the priorities are in their schools as far as what they teach and how they teach. And then from there, this group facilitates and helps the principal and the teachers to create a schedule that meets the needs of the students, teachers, and the community.
Will it address the issues that we're currently facing with sending districts in our career and technical school also as part of that, or is that going to be something that we'd have to ask them extra to do, because that's something that I'm quite interested in, being that we have start times different from all of the other districts in the area?
That would be inclusive. So anything and everything that impacts either campus is included in this, and they are aware of our career in tech. So it's a discussion with the community, with the teachers, with the principal about how do we want to offer our courses, what do we feel is the best way, and how do we meet all the students' needs. They facilitate that, they write the priorities, and they work with, this is from the ground up, work with teachers and the building principals on how they feel is best to serve the kids in the community.
And if I missed it, I apologize, but when would we expect to have the answers to this so that we can either vote for or against it in plenty of time to notify everybody in the upcoming school year?
I think one, it would be the work with the teachers. I would imagine that being the building leadership, I think the building leadership and teachers would want to drive that as far as this is when we'd like a tentative plan. I believe the proposal spoke to maybe April 1st or the spring.
You feel that's enough time?
If we start in November, December, and start the meetings and bring them down, they already have background information as far as student population, what we offer now, our courses we offer now. They've seen our program of studies, so they would start to look into that data.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Dr. Flowers?
I just think it's important to note that the scheduling services will support our strategic plan implementation. And this is another example of putting everything that we do, meshing and working together.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next one is 4.3, request for approval of policy updates and revisions. Dr. Flowers.
Okay, so everyone has gotten the rather lengthy document with the policies there, and then crossed out anything that has been either deleted or edited. And then in red, you'll see the rewrites, so to speak. And I'm waiting for my document to open up here too, sorry. Are there any
Yeah.
questions, concerns?
Do we have a motion on the floor? Mrs. Gaines made the motion. Ms. Sylvia seconded. So is there any discussions? There's multiple items that are here, so if we have a discussion on a particular item, if we could just
Yeah, please indicate which one.
indicate which one. Mr. Carlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is very interesting. We have before us essentially 100 pages of changes to Newport School Committee policy. The first question I have, Ms. Flowers, is why are you presenting all of these changes in one meeting this evening?
May I answer this now?
Absolutely.
Well, we worked on this really all summer long. We, meaning the policy subcommittee, made up of Mrs. Sylvia, Mrs. Gaines, Mr. Gomes, and myself, and of course the superintendent was present. In 100 and some pages of changes is not really, some of them it's like you cross out a word and you use a new term. Many of these I'd say just about all of these pages might have an insert. I'm looking at one here, it's policy number 1540, and we inserted a paragraph and said, prior to the regular meeting, a pre-meeting will be held at 6:15 p.m. to review the agenda. That's just one sentence that just puts on in the policy manual something that we've been doing for some time now. So that's just one example there. Some of the others were, inserting a phrase just to clarify, and then there are a few others that reflect policy changes that have been strongly recommended by RIDE and have come down, and we have, shall we say, adapted them by, putting the name Newport Public Schools in. A few others really clarify what we've been doing. So there might be a sentence here or there. So to say it's not really 100 pages. Why at this time? Because this is November. We worked on it all summer. It was time for administration to get everything put into those pages, review, proofreading, that sort of a thing. And a few other items came up the past week or so. And then to present them at a regular meeting. That's all. I think everyone had 5 days to review these.
Dr. Flowers, if I might, the one that you brought up, 1540, I believe.
That was just one that I...
No, I'm just reading it again, and it says regular meetings should not remain in session beyond 9. I believe it should say 9:30 or give us a 3-hour session,
yes.
correct?
In session beyond, I should have said beyond 9:30 p.m. And sometimes it's safe to say or to indicate or a 3-hour session. This is just myself talking now.
Right.
Suppose we decide, hey, something's going on, let's start a meeting earlier, 3 hours maximum, because beyond that, no one is really going to be...
Would this be the appropriate time then to insert an amendment to that before we
You
give
could
it
make a
first
note
reading?
of that, yes,
Yeah.
make a note. But that's an example right there, and thank you for, that's why we always need a lot of pairs of eyes looking at that. So that's the long answer to really a very short question. Why now? Keeping in mind that some of these, I've been on, going into my 10th year soon, and it's every so often these policies get changed, and you'll see at the end of where the history, you'll see the dates when these get changed, or amended, I should say.
Mr. Chairman, do I still have the floor?
Yes, Mr. Conlon.
Thank you. Another question for Ms. Flowers, please, as the chairperson of this subcommittee who recommended these changes. Ms. Flowers was so kind as to bring to the school committee 4 months ago a reminder of the Newport Public Schools philosophy. And she brought to us 2 pages, and among those philosophies that she highlighted was that school committee members will endeavor to make policy decisions only after full discussions at publicly held committee meetings. I would like to ask Ms. Flowers, how many members of the public attended your meetings at which you decided to put forward these changes in school committee policy?
Well, first of all, that wasn't the philosophy that I brought up, that was the ethics statement. Secondly, those were work sessions. The policy subcommittee, just as finance subcommittee and health and wellness and so forth. This is, everyone sitting out here now with the public that are present at this.
You didn't answer my question,
I did.
Ms. Flowers.
I did.
Mr. Chairman, my question is to Ms. Flowers. At your policy subcommittee meetings in which you determined that we need to change this policy, how many members of the public attended those meetings?
No members of the public, but the meetings were advertised, the door was open, and the meeting notice was published in the local press.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, do I still have the floor? Okay. Ms. Flowers, can you please answer why you feel that, or why you recommend, as the chair of this subcommittee, that the policy regarding what Newport School Committee members can put on the agenda be changed? Very specifically.
Can you give me the number, please?
You should be much more comfortable with the number than I am. You're the subcommittee chair.
Excuse me, Mr. Conlon, with all due respect, at the very beginning, I asked if you're going to ask a question on an agenda item, that you state the number, so it's fair to Dr. Flowers. She has a lot of paperwork in front of her. It's not her job to figure out which one you're talking
Just tell
about.
me the
I have 101 pages
So do
that are
I.
being
Yeah, we
changed.
don't have it.
I do not, it is Dr. Flowers, Ms. Flowers,
Mr. Conlon.
responsibility to,
No.
I am not the chair of the subcommittee. She should know, I cannot
No,
name
your
to
question
you.
is out of order, I'm sorry. No.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I appeal the ruling of the chair.
There's an appeal to the chair. Does anyone agree with Mr. Conlon that I'm out of order for limiting this? Mr.
You need a
Galvin,
second, you need a second to the appeal to proceed.
is there a
I
second?
ask for a second, Mr. Chairman. I again ask for a second, Mr.
I
Chairman.
see none. We're moving on. If you have a
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I still have the floor there. You're putting 101 pages of
Mr. Conlon.
policy changes before this school committee.
I'm not, Mr. Conlon. I get the same packet at the same time you did. I cannot meet all these meetings. I understand that. Nor can you. That's the policies for it. That's why we have a policy committee, and we have separate committees that each and every one of us was assigned to. If you'll notice, this is the package I have that I got a few days ago to look at for tonight's meeting. So it's very lengthy.
Which is completely to my point.
With that-
This is outrageous that you're putting 101 pages.
Okay.
The public has not
Understood.
been involved with this.
Ms. Bowman?
Mr. Chairman, there's an obvious reason why these changes are being put forth, and that is to say, if the members, the majority of the Newport School Committee, do not like what is being put on the agenda, they simply change the rules
I think I have-
and say you cannot put these things on the agenda without the permission of.
I think I have the floor.
Ms. Boland, you can speak. Mr. Conlon, if you could review, if you want my documents, you can point out which one it is you'd like to speak on, and I'll come back to you. Ms.
Okay,
Boland.
So appreciate I know this is a lot of hard work to put this together. It was a lot to review, 100 pages, but if we can pull the following items for more review before and I can meet with the committee to explain my concerns on these later, so we don't bog down the meeting. So these are the numbers. There's a conflict with 4650. On 1540, something needs to be added. 1542, we have a newspaper issue. 1545, we need to add something to that. 1546, I have a problem with Shell and May. And 1548. I'll just have my list. Okay, reread it again? I'll just tell you the numbers. Okay, so let me start from the beginning. 4650, 1540, 1542, 1545, 1546, and 1548. They just have some issues that we just need to deal with. Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Flowers.
I believe it's 1548 is the one that Mr. Collin is referencing, where it's the superintendent in cooperation with the chair shall prepare the agenda for all regular and workshop meetings. And then we changed shall into may, referencing the number of business days that the requested item should be presented so the backup can be provided. And any denied request shall be added provided it is co-sponsored by 2 additional members of the committee. That might be the one that you're referring to.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Carlin.
thank you, Ms. Flowers, for pointing out that specific policy number, 1548. It is absolutely obvious to me, perhaps to the public, and certainly, I assume, to my members, my colleagues on the committee. We have a long tradition on this school committee where members are able to place items on the agenda. There are parameters, there are time concerns, etc. What Dr. Flowers is attempting to do here as the chairman of this subcommittee, and I would like her to defend this, is she's attempting to take that right of a school committee member away. They don't like, my colleagues, what certain things or when certain things are placed on the school committee agenda. So therefore, they change the rules. I have very grave concerns about this in general, but I also think that state law, although not specific on how you place items on the agenda, state law spells out a school committee member's right with regard to policy and other items. What they are trying to do here, folks, is simply block anything that they don't like being on the agenda. It's outrageous. And I would like Dr. Flowers to tell us specifically why that recommendation was made. Why did you need to do this?
We on the policy committee all agreed to it. It wasn't consensus, it was agreement. The fact that we put down, let me find that line again, provided it's sponsored by 2 additional members of the committee. This is something that if you look at I think they call them dockets for the council, that quite often a resolution, as they would call it, or an action item, as we call it, has more, I'll use the expression clout, if you have co-sponsors. And that kind of puts you in the place of, well, you have some kind of backup. And it would be very open. Who, say if I said I'm going to put something on the agenda, well, I'm going to have, I'll ask my 2 colleagues to co-sponsor it. And that would be very open about who is supporting something. That's the thing. Keep in mind, and as I messaged you yesterday, this is not a 1-person committee by any stretch of the imagination, believe me. There are 4 of us on that. sometimes one will move in and out. We always would have at least 2 or 3 people there. No one of us owns any one of these changes.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
it is quite obvious what is being attempted here. I certainly, I will take responsibility for anything that I place forward. And Dr. Flowers is the chair of this subcommittee. I might remind the public,
Is there a question on what we're talking about right now?
This is a
rather than
discussion.
dialogue with the public, Mr. Conlon?
Mr. Chairman, this is
On the
discussion.
motion. No, it's
Did-
on the motion.
Did you ask for discussion on the motion?
Yes, so make it your
All right, so
main
this
motion.
is discussion, Mr. Chairman. My discussion continues. I might remind the public that prior to 2016, March of 2016, the public was not invited to speak at all of the meetings that the Newport School Committee holds. My colleague Becky Boland introduced an action item which allowed the public to speak on any items at any meeting of the Newport School Committee. Her resolution passed, her action item passed by a 5-2 vote. Among those voting against it was Dr. Flowers. This is a transparency issue. We should be more transparent as a committee. And what she is doing by putting this forward as the chairman of the subcommittee is she is making the process far less transparent. She is saying to the voters, to the
Excuse me,
citizens,
Mr.
to the
Conlon.
taxpayers.
No, I'm going to stop you. Dr. Flowers.
Why are you stopping me, Mr. Chairman? Because you don't like what I'm saying?
Because you're misleading the public. You're telling half-truths. Dr. Flowers is not the one that brought this forward. A committee brought this forward. That is enough. Mrs. Gaines,
She is the chair of the
Mr.
subcommittee. She
Mr.
placed
Conlon.
this on the agenda. You know that. Don't try to fool the
You're
public.
out of order. Stop.
Mr.
You're
Chairman.
out. Out of order.
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Gaines,
you
you're-
are blocking debate. You have done this repeatedly. Dr. Flowers is now doing. It is obvious to the public what's happening. If you don't like what's on the agenda, you
Mr.
take it
Conlon,
off.
you're
You
out
stop
of
it.
order.
I'm not out of order, for the record, but
You are.
Mr. Chairman, I will, for the purpose of decorum, I will stop talking. I think everybody understands what I mean.
Thank you. I would just like to speak as a member of this committee. And when we were discussing this item, it was mentioned that there are 7 of us here. If all 7 of us brought 3 items to the agenda, there would be 21 items for discussion. We would never get out of here in 3.5 hours. There has to be some kind of control over the establishment of the agenda. It can't just be willy-nilly. One person puts on 15 items and that's the agenda. The rules say that the chair and the superintendent shall set the agenda. They take into consideration all that has been requested. And there has to be some kind of guidance, some kind of quality control for a meeting to proceed and make sense. So I have no problem with the language in that particular, I don't have it in front of me, but we certainly talked about it long enough that I remember the essence of it. And it was not to keep anybody from making anything. If the person has 2 or 3 sponsors for an item, it's obvious it's something that needs to be discussed. Anybody who brought forth 3 or 4 members on an item would never be not put on the agenda in any reasonable discussion. So
So you must have other members of the
Excuse
committee
me.
who agree with you
Excuse me.
ahead of time
Excuse me,
before
Mr.
putting it
Conlon.
on the agenda.
Mrs. Gaines has the floor. If you overtalk me one more time, I'm going to have to take another measure here. Be
Be my
respectful
guest,
to your
Mr.
peer,
Chairman.
your colleague. She has the floor.
I was-
Mr. Chairman, you have no problem cutting me off, but you allow Mrs. Gaines to talk. If you don't like what we're saying, what I'm saying, you cut me right off, but you have no
I'm
problem
gonna have a
allowing
short
Mrs. Gaines.
recess, please. I'm sorry, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, it's a threat. It is a threat. Okay, I'll report it to the chair. Go ahead.
Say hi to Mom.
Okay, folks, if we could have our committee back to the dais, those of us that remain here at the meeting, we continue. I apologize for the interruption, but certain things need to be handled off scene, off camera, to maintain some type of decorum, so that we can agree to disagree, but in a fashion that's respectful to everyone. Nobody limits debate, and I'll certainly entertain everything that people want to say, but you cannot be disrespectful. I won't allow it. I don't care. Some of the expressions that are going on out there may see differently, but I see it that you definitely respect your elders, number one. I was taught that from my mother. And number two, when somebody you're asked to get time to speak and people let you speak, you should, reciprocate and let other people speak on their behalf. That being said, I don't disagree with the fact that there are an awful lot of policy items here. And after a short caucus, I believe there's a motion on the floor to continue this.
Mr. Chair, I would move that policy changes require 2 readings. So I'm going to move that this first reading be continued to our next meeting. And in the meantime, that the members put in writing what their concerns are or what changes they would like to see.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second motion.
Any discussion on that? Ms. Boland?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so basically, the motion was made to continue this item until the next agenda, which is about a month away, give everybody in the committee an opportunity to thoroughly read them and vet them out and get their input, and then put that back to Dr. Flowers.
Yeah, and also, these, I believe, Mrs. Nash can clarify for me, these can be accessed on the public section of board docs? Yeah, so when people can get onto board docs and it's the public section.
You can see the changes.
Yeah, and you can
the
go
intent
through
of
and
the
you might
changes.
say, I have a question about this or that. It's a perfect opportunity for public input. And just like to remind everyone that this, well, when we be continued, is the first of 2 readings. This is pro forma. You read it and you say, okay, maybe this should be changed or any other questions, and then that's brought up at the second reading. So
So the only action being taken tonight is we're gonna move this first reading a month ahead. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted. The next item on the agenda is 4.4. It's a request to direct an increase in attendance rates in RHS and to identify steps to achieve such. This was asked for by myself, so if I have a motion and a second, I can explain.
So moved.
There's a second and a second by Dr. Flowers. I've been watching the reports that we get on a daily basis from all three campuses on the attendance rates, and I find a glaring problem at the Rogers High School campus. So I asked a lot of questions, and the answers are somewhat the same. So tonight I wanted to kind of get the debate into the open and ask the superintendent to explain at Rogers High School specifically. She'll tell you what C-Tree is. Superintendent Germain will explain what C-Tree is, and C-Tree is a document that's, in my opinion, was written, I believe, in 2014 and not upgraded. We're in 2017. We have a consistent absentee rate of close to 20 to 25% of that campus every single day. Occasionally you'll be down to maybe 100 out of the 600 students, but it's regularly 150 kids absent every single day at Rogers High School. I want to know what's being done. I want to see and hear from the staff, if they're here, what policies you've instituted, things that you've done in the here and now, not the things about C-Tree and not the partners and all these other things that we've done. I want to know, because I've been asking this question now every single week since the start of school, why are there so many kids absent from Rogers, and how come there's such a vast difference in other schools? I even suggested that potentially the staff at Thompson offer suggestions to Rogers High School because they seem to do a fairly decent job at getting kids to school. They'll have absentees, and then I know they make multiple follow-ups. I also completely understand we've changed leadership at the high school, and I understand there's a lot of issues going on there. But I really need to know what it is we're doing, because if we can't get these students into the schools, then we can't do anything for them. And there's just way too many for me to just sit by and watch. And that's the reason this is an action item. If we need to make a directive tonight to formulate a team or a task force, I don't know, but no mas here. We need to know what's going on. So Superintendent Germain, if you can explain to me what has been going on very recently, what new policies, what reports, what are we doing?
Okay, could we also make sure we add the dismissals to that too? The dismissals are incredibly high compared to any other school. The kids that leave during the middle of the day, because if you're not there, you can't learn. So I think we had 38 today.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this year, and you are correct, the practices and the policies for attendance at Rogers High School and through the entire district has been going on for about 3 or 4 years. Van Buren Charitable Foundation refunded us to start to really try to tackle the problem and to change some of the practices. Some of the practices that have changed this year already is that I'm to facilitate each meeting each month at each school, and I'm supposed to direct personnel as far as what they're supposed to be doing and looking at the data in which they're working. For instance, our attendance officer, Mr. Merritt, he's now being involved as far as comment and as far as recording his data, as far as how many visits he's making to what families and whether it's having an impact. That's an example. Another example we have is I know the Rogers High School team, and I will call Mr. Vance up here so he can speak to it directly. He can sit right here if that's better for him. But I know the high school team is also starting to put in some new practices as well. We have had discussions with Thompson Middle School as far as what they do, and we have been trying to mirror those practices. As a matter of fact, all of us in our administrative meeting prior to this meeting, we did have frank discussion about how Thompson Middle School breaks it up and designates particular people specifically for particular grade levels and for specific families. And I think that kind of consistency in what they're doing at Thompson has really made an impact. One of the things we do have to discuss and review is the age difference. The difference at Pell and Thompson is it's mostly adults that still are involved with their children and oversee their children's day-to-day activities, When they move on to the high school, it's not an excuse, but it's reality. The students are now in high school, they're able to drive, and they come and go sometimes as they please. And also with parents that are working, I think there's an expectation from them that their children are going to get themselves to school on time and move forward. We also have different issues at the high school level that are not present at the elementary and middle. And I know Mr. Vance and his team are working on that. So now I'm going to hand the mic over to the principal, Principal Vance.
So some of the things that we've talked about doing to address the attendance issue, there are multiple layers, right? And so we're initially looking at trying to roll back into the schedule advisory so that kids can actually have a personal connection with staff in that small setting, so that there's more of a connection with staff in the building, with the students as well. There's a lot of research out there that says that's a part of the reason that kids actually come to school is that personal connection with an adult in the building. So we're looking to build that back in. We're also looking, in the beginning of second quarter, we're looking to roll out some incentive-based initiatives for attendance. We're looking to build in grade level competition between 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, who has the highest rate of attendance for the semester, and then that grade would earn some sort of incentive, whether it's like be the principal for the day, or duct tape the dean to the wall, or something really kind of fun and energizing for kids to come to school. Right? Yeah, I know Mr. Hanos is not a big fan, but we'll convince him. But then we're also looking at doing some of those same things with our homeroom attendance. So what homeroom has the highest rate of attendance for the month, for the quarter, and again, building in an incentive for that homeroom. And then also for those kids that have perfect attendance for the month, they get added into like a drawing, so they can get a gift certificate to something in the community, whether it's a restaurant or an event or something along those lines. We need to do something different because our attendance is impacted pretty significantly on a day-to-day basis, so we need to try and make it engaging for kids to come back to Rogers and not want to avoid, and that peer-to-peer kind of leverage with a competition between grades or classes or individuals kind of leverages that a little.
The other thing that's happening is the credit recovery program that the principals, I know at Thompson and Rogers, have discussed with Dr. Bean and Kim as far as, because we're trying to bring in the attendance, the student behaviors, and the academic achievement. And with having that credit recovery program during the school year, instead of waiting until the end of the school year, we'll keep the kids engaged and give them that confidence and know that there are supports there in school. So there's a tendency for them not to run away from school and want to be in school to be able to recover those credits. So that's something else I know you and the team are doing as well.
Ms. Boland?
Okay, a couple things. Well, first of all, that advisory, is there anything in the way right now? Can we get it started? We don't have to wait till next year, correct? I mean, this is something you can institute.
Yeah, so we're looking to do it for the beginning of second quarter.
Okay.
We had to figure out the day and how the schedule was going to run and get agreement. So yeah, it's going to happen this year.
Okay, and then as far as absences go, you notice that many of them stay unexcused. I noticed that in the C-Tree report it said that they recommended at the end of last year that every student be called, like to institute something like they had at Thompson, where there's a connection on a phone, although I will say that you're going to get many phone numbers that are incorrect, but that's a big issue. But that's also an opportunity to get the number correct. But so what are we doing to reaching out, and what kind of punishment is there for a child who has unexcused absences? Are we running detention every day? Can we, like I know punitive doesn't always work, but maybe for some kids it would. So.
Students do have detention for missing multiple days of school that are unexcused. In regards to the contacts, that's something that we're also trying to work through. So when we're making those phone calls home, if we don't have an accurate number, how are we following up, ensuring that we do? We use the robocall or the auto call in the morning, and then when those get bounced back, we try and populate that list and break that down to follow up with those phone calls. But again, like I said, we have some families where either the phone or email are not accurate, so we can't always get contact. So we're trying to work through that, and there is a large number of families that we need to do that with.
So in that instance, I would imagine when we can't get a contact, that's when Eddie gets real busy, because he's going to get. Is he being given? Are you wearing his shoes out?
We have a list that he is presently working through, and then we update that pretty regularly.
And then I heard earlier in the year that I know coming onto the scene new that is everybody fully up and understanding staff-wise of how to appropriately populate the attendance sheets within the system? So that is there a system that is everybody fully aware and knows how to use that, or is that an issue? Do you need PD for that? I mean, is it being logged appropriately?
So I think at this point, our regular teaching staff is pretty good about getting the attendance in. It's when we have subs or coverages in classrooms that it's not always up to date. And so what we've been doing now at around 8:45, making a call saying, okay, all subs and staff that are covering, send your attendance down to the dean. So we're working on a system to make sure that that's in accurately.
And do you have a self-imposed target, quarter to quarter, week to week, month to month, on how much better you want your attendance to look like within your own group? Like, have you thought about saying, I want to do X amount better? Is this something that you've done? Is that something we need to do now?
So I haven't sat down and said this is the growth that I'm looking for, but I'm looking for mid-90s of attendance rate, 95, 96, 97, and upwards. That's why we're looking at that incentive base. So to really get kids coming to school, we need to do something differently. There are so many different things that impact students that come to school, like driving and having a choice and going to get your coffee before they make it to school on time. But some of the other parts are, we have kids that need to work, right? And so now how do we shift that dynamic so now they're not going out and working, they're coming to school on a day-to-day basis.
Right. And that stuff's in the secret report. I think we all understand. We have parents that are working, kids that have to watch their siblings or have to stay up late. We understand the social issues, but it's not 25% of our population, I wouldn't think.
No.
Okay. Mr. Gomes, did you have a question? Has there been any communication between the campuses, Thompson to, I mean, we've got a little bit more of a tenured crew down there. I know we got a new dean, which is great. We got a new principal, which is great at Rogers, but we have a staff that's, I mean, you know, have you guys been working together to discuss different things that may or may not work? I know the age group is different, but the methodology and the process must be somewhat similar.
Yeah, we've talked with the dean at Thompson around their process of how do they distribute phone calls to make sure that they have that follow-up when kids aren't in school. So we are in communication with Thompson.
And then if you find anything further that you may need, certainly bring it to the superintendent. If it's something that you don't have, bring it to the superintendent. So, Dr. Klaus, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was just looking, again through all of this report, and I think when you just mentioned that there are discussions among the leadership of the three schools, especially, and I've always had the suspicion that it might be whole families that just may be out at certain times. And sometimes if you can tackle the problem, if the young people are in at least two of the different schools, just looking at some of the, they call them, school climate factors and what some students say are the reasons why they're not coming. And again, a lot of other points here about almost immediately when a student doesn't show up, like an unexcused absence, and that always concerns me. When it's unexcused, like, does anyone know that the youngster is not in school besides the people at the school? Again, I'm speaking from experience. When a youngster didn't show up, or even came in late, we'd say, if you got a call from the office, so-and-so is going to be late, you say, well, okay. But you just hope nothing happened on the way or something, there's a reason why the kid is not in school. So there's a lot of other concerns besides the academic here. It is the student safety. So there are just so many issues that I think is pretty well covered in the documents we have here.
Ms. Boland?
Yeah, I also think, like, when you do get this advisory up and running in a week or two, that you might want to make one of the first subjects about attendance and about what is not excused and excused absences, is because I know that a lot of kids, have a lot of misconceptions about, what is and is not excused, and maybe that could be one of your first incentives in the advisory.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Ms. Gaines?
I would not stress excuse at all. An absence is an absence. If they're not there, they're not learning.
Yeah.
So hospitalization would be my only excuse.
At this point in time, I put this in for an action item, but I also don't want to work too hard from the top down. I'm hearing that some things are happening, and I don't believe that there's any action that we need to take right now, but we will absolutely be expecting a report, and I want those numbers that I see to go down. The numbers I see, who's absent, that's why I say those numbers got to go down. And then hopefully we want like a report next month on how we're making out. But right now, I'm going to, let you do your job, and hopefully between you, Mr. Merritt, and the rest of the staff into the back of the room, and all the teachers as well. Parents also, whatever. We got to get these kids to school, because if we can't get them to school, we can't help them. Thank you. The next action item is a request for TMS grades 6 through 8 to be offered ability-based classes in ELA, mathematics, science, and social studies.
Mr. Chairman, could we ask if there's anybody here that wanted to address that? Is there anybody here that wanted to address that issue?
Okay, Mr. Kelly, if you want to step up, and then right after him. Sure thing. Sure.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the school committee. Thank you for the opportunity to address you on this important educational issue. The Thompson Middle School redesign project embarked in...
I'm sorry, Mr. Kelly, if you could just, for the folks that may not know who you are.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Kelly. I reside at 57 K Street in Newport. I'm a former Newport School Committee member and chairperson.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The Thompson Middle School redesign project really was focused on ability grouping at grade level, but fundamentally focused on closing the achievement gap for all students. It was really intended to prepare them for the rigors of high school that they were not being prepared for by the original design at Thompson Middle School. So as a reminder, and as a parent who sent our children to Thompson Middle School when it first opened, when it was rebuilt and reopened in 2001, the educational model was fundamentally based on student groupings in clusters of 4 classrooms with heterogeneous ability levels. As explained to me at the time our children entered the school, the approach allowed successful students to work with and support less successful or proficient students in achieving goals of education. Sounded like a noble cause, and we were all in. After 8 years of conducting this educational experiment, the results demonstrated, however, that it was a failure. Proficiency gains for students were stagnant on standardized test scores, homework assignments were non-existent, and social study classes largely involved coloring inside of map boundaries. This was a serious concern to parents whom had been accustomed to rigorous assignments and expectations at the elementary school level, which were abandoned for 3 years of middle school at precisely a time when student preparation for high school education should occur. While I understand the concept of differentiated instruction strategies that were employed, but I have to question the ability to use these in the disparate proficiency levels that exist in the Newport public schools. Students have been allowed to matriculate through the system without obtaining proficiencies at grade level, resulting in up to 4 different grade levels of proficiency at any given grade level in the school system. A well-documented shortfall of differentiated learning is a techniques fail when there's too disparate of a range of students in a classroom. Under the conditions in Newport, for example, we're expecting a teacher to successfully educate students with a grade 8, 7, 6, and 5 ability level simultaneously. In effect, the community had created dozens of one-room schoolhouses within the middle school building. As a result of these shortcomings in the educational model, the school committee administration began discussion in 2009 regarding alternative approaches and methods that could improve learning outcomes for all students and close this achievement gap. We discussed ability grouping. We discussed looping teachers through the grade level from 6, 7, 8 with the students. We discussed implementation of longer school days. We discussed requiring students in elementary and middle school to have school uniforms. As I'm sure you found with all educational research topics that you review, they're often conflicting results and largely reflect a researcher's individual point of view. As I looked into these particular areas and contacted national leaders in our university systems, I was struck by the advice of the late Dr. Charles Achilles of Temple University College of Education. His recommendation to me was to view every educational policy by asking the question, how does it improve student opportunity to learn and teacher opportunity to teach? The eloquence and simplicity of this advice brought a sharp focus to my opinions regarding operations of the Newport School Department middle school model. The shortfall of the groupings became obvious. On the status quo, teachers were asked to work with students with 4 grade levels of ability, which resulted in a 25% opportunity for the student to learn and for the teacher to teach. On the other hand, the option was to do ability grouping where the student and the teacher each had a 100% ability to teach and learn during the course of the school day. With this in mind, the school administration and teachers set forth to examine existing educational model and examine options for implementation of a proficiency-based model. The intention was to focus all reading, math, and behavioral resources on the classrooms that had not yet demonstrated grade level proficiency, while also providing rigorous educational content to challenge proficient students. Over time, it was intended, particularly with the opportunity to close the achievement gap at the Pell School, that the proficiency level groupings at each grade level would be reduced from 4 to 2 to 1, making the discussion irrelevant. Those discussions took place over a 9-month period with numerous presentations at public school committee meetings. While the implementation of ability-based grouping was not without concern for unintended consequences, the school administration implemented this model in 2010 school year with the consent of the school committee. In addition, the PBIS program was introduced as a means to change the behavior of students at the school. The results of this model were immediately obvious based on anecdotal feedback of students being more engaged at each proficiency level. Equally important were kneecap results for 2013, which demonstrated systemic improvements in math and ELA, which outperformed most middle schools in the state, including Gaudet Middle School in neighboring Middletown. This was an unprecedented result, as for years, Newport school system rationalized its underwhelming performance through comparison to inner-city school districts of Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls. Parents expressed enthusiastic support for this new model as it provided the rigor in education that they expected. The results drew families from private education institutions back into the Newport public school system. And as a final note, while claiming the success might be based on the redesign, I have to recognize the efforts of Mr. Crowley, who was the principal at the time. He was engaged with the community, he saw through the implementation with rigor, and really through his efforts and his hard work, that model became a successful model. So at this point, you have 2 8-year periods of study where one model was unsuccessful from an educational outcome perspective, and one was highly successful. So I ask you to take that into consideration in your deliberation.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Hello, my name is G. McLaughlin. I'm actually a staff member at Rogers High School, but I have a student at Thompson and 2 students at Pell. I just want to say that when they made this change, it was just upsetting as a parent that we heard not one word about it. The first day they went to school is when we were told that everything was changed. Hopefully, it'll be good in the end. Unfortunately, for the student I have, it's been a very negative experience. He's having trouble concentrating in classes due to the various levels, and there's a lot of behaviors in the classroom. We went from last year, 5th grade and 6th grade, lots of homework every night, lots of study. He has very little homework this year at all. He finds that there's a lot of adults in the room now that are also distracting to him. I've emailed, his teachers have been great. I've emailed the teachers back and forth on numerous occasions about just having certain students on one side of the room, him on the other, so he can concentrate more. I know you can't call it a one student, but I think for before this change should have been made, there should have been parental input, there should have been some discussion, and there certainly should have been some notification, rather than just getting to school and not even understanding what was going on. They didn't make full changes. Some students still don't have to do the foreign language, other students do. They had advancement for math and ELA, but not for science and social studies. So it wasn't like, it was only done in like spurts. And it just seems like it was thrown together very quickly and really not thought out of. I understand the thought process behind it, but I just don't think there was enough thought put into it. So just as a parent and as other parents or students that he's friends with, we're finding it to be a difficult challenge. And working at the high school, I don't see it implemented that way. I think it much more mainstreamed, and they do. You can go in high honors if that's where you're at. If you're having behaviors, you can go in a certain place. Thompson has not become like that now. It's all for one, all in one classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent Jermaine, if you could brief us and explain maybe where we're at currently and what, what our target is eventually, the outcome of this.
Thank you, Mr. Enos. Mr. Chair. Presently, we've already had a meeting with our parent group. As mentioned, we have 2 high ability groupings in ELA and math. Presently, social studies and science are heterogeneously grouped. We are working with the Thompson Middle School team, and we'll be moving forward to look at different models that are available. We have a follow-up meeting in December.
Okay. I don't know what action at this point. This was put on as an action item with the desired outcome to be. Move to receive it as read and put it up for discussion at the next meeting. Move to accept. Any opposed? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Action item number 4.6 is a request to establish a bus service hotline.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there is a bus service hotline.
There.
Therefore, I would move to table this item.
Yes.
And there is actually a bus phone line to be called. You can email the bus company. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can contact the school and they will give you the numbers in which you do. But we've been on the bus company pretty harsh lately as far as making sure that they answer the phone lines.
Also, you might mention that there's a tip line too. So if any parent has any positive comment, concern at any time, those are looked at during the day. So you can, the tip line is right on the website.
It is.
And is that what it's termed, tip line?
Tip line. And we also have the Durham Bus Service app
Yes.
for parents. So at any time
They can check where your children are, right?
4.7 is a request to consider change in school start and end times for Rogers, Thompson, and Pell.
I basically would move to table it at this time because I believe there's a statewide study going on this issue.
That is correct.
And I believe we just adopted something this evening that's going to help the scheduling and look at
Correct.
our scheduling also.
And did somebody come to talk on this issue? Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi there. My name is Colleen Hermes. I'm a Newport resident. I'm a teacher at Rogers. I have a parent in the high school. I came tonight to talk a little bit about the start time issue, which I saw was in the paper, and wanted to talk about that, but now I'm kind of confused. Is this no action tonight? Is it something that's...
No action.
So-
No action tonight, but you're more than willing to say your piece. We're going through this.
Will we have a...
issue.
So will it be on the agenda next month?
Maybe.
It'll potentially be on. This is an issue I talked about 2 or 3 meetings ago as far as meshing us with the sending districts. It's an ongoing issue of mine, so we will be discussing it. The action item for this evening Hearing that we're also getting a grant to help us look at the scheduling is going to be certainly helpful.
Okay.
No, your input will be well taken, obviously.
Okay, I just didn't want to waste anyone's time.
We won't be taking action tonight, though, Ms. Service, that's all.
All right. Well, I just then I'll come back, I guess, when you have when it's something that potentially is an action item. I was asked by the department heads and by teachers in the high school to come tonight because this is an important issue for us. And also some of my students asked me to speak about it, and some parents. And you know, it's something that we talk about a lot. I just a couple of things that should be brought to your attention. You know, you talked a lot about attendance tonight and the attendance issue. And just about 2 years ago, I was at the meeting when y'all voted to have the start time changed from 7:30 to 8:15. And it was supposed to be a year study. And it was also supposed to be looking at a way as improving attendance. But unfortunately, I think the intent was good. I mean, a lot of the teachers, we discuss the psychological benefits, the physiological benefits of sleep, but we haven't seen that happen. We've seen unintended consequences that have negatively affected the student body. So that's really what I wanted to mention to you. The attendance rate has gotten worse since we went back to 7:30. And some of the other things that when I think about what's best for the students, we've seen a decrease in, a staggering decrease in after-school supports where kids, we offer them, but kids aren't attending. They leave right after school to go to work, take care of brothers and sisters, attend sports right away. One of the most shocking statistics we had was in the guidance office. In the year where Rogers started at 7:30 and ended at 2, the number of people who the students that were counted to be in the guidance office after school to pick up college applications, scholarships, just to talk, was about 337 students had been in the guidance office after school by the mid-year of 2015. Last year, that number was 3. The community school, well, I'm not speaking for the community school, I don't represent them, but I inquired about their numbers. And in 2015, they averaged 21 students a day. And in 2017, they're averaging 12. So what's happening is after school, students aren't staying for extra help. And we have asked them, why aren't you staying for extra help? And it's because to them, the day is late and they have other things that they urgently have to do. So I think that's enough. I've heard that we get money from the state because we have this late start. I've heard that we have to do this for another year because we need 3 years of data. I'll tell you that there's 2 years of data that's looking pretty badly, and I'm just hopeful that why do we have to continue if it hasn't been effective? There's other statistics, there's attendance, and we picked 6 random days out of the school year from 2015, 2016, 2017. And the number of tardies on September 21st, 2015 was 20. The number of tardies in 2017 on September 21st was 41. There was 25 kids tardy on the 5th of May, 2015, and 44 tardy on the 5th of May, 2017. So I remember that meeting when the push was to improve attendance and to improve tardies, and the start time change was seen as a big part of it, and that hasn't been the case. So there's a lot of data, and there's a lot of people who would love to talk to you about this from different walks of life. Students signed a petition, they had over 300 signatures, to change it back to 7:30, which I think would be surprising, that kids would want to get up earlier, but they actually said that their after-school time was precious to them. One other fact was this past year, because we don't match the other districts on time, and we have students from NACTEC coming, and we're not open yet technically, so that kids are, Rogers isn't running the same time as their sending district. But one of the other problems that we saw too was in sports, where kids love sports, obviously, right? They love to be on teams and participate. And through no fault of their own, we had 6 days this past first quarter, 6 days, a week, plus 1 day where soccer team, boys and girls, tennis team, had to leave school and miss their 7th period class to be on the bus, to be on time for the sports. Now, you know, the kids, the sports are an important part of their life, but they're missing, you know, 7 days out of 45, 6 days out of 45, you know, for a particular sport. And one statistic, AP Calculus had lost like 20% of their class time at that time, you know, through other things that they had lost time with. Anyway, there's a lot of information there that I hope that you consider maybe when this action item comes back. I just want to say one thing. It's kind of a sad night here. I feel really badly about what happened. But also, Mr. Carlin was the person who sponsored this action item because he did listen to students and parents and teachers and community members. And a lot of people are here tonight because of the action items that Mr. Carlin had put forward. So I just wish that there could be a little bit more working together when we come to these meetings. And I don't know. I just hope I hope it improves. I hope it improves. Yes.
Since the state is seriously considering a change in start time statewide, I would suggest you put those suggestions in writing and send that input to the state. Send it to RIDE. Because we're very serious about start time statewide. And that needs to be heard at the state level.
Well, I just wonder when they'll get around to doing that because I'm not sure they'd really listen, I don't think. I'm thinking if Portsmouth and Middletown changed to 8:15, then it would be better for us. Yeah, I just, I don't know.
Mr. President, one just quick thing.
Yeah.
I was concerned tonight, and I told Mr. Carlin that I would second all of the items so that we could have discussion tonight, just so you know. And so everybody on this was aware that we would have a second. We would have, if he had been here to bring the item up, so, but, you know, so we can have open communication.
Certainly, and it
Yeah.
doesn't stop the input, which is very, very important to me. When it comes right down to it, I did not vote initially for the time change because of most of the reasons that Ms. Hermes has stated. And again, there is no such money that we're getting that I'm aware of, Ms. Jermaine. There is no 3-year study that I'm aware of, Ms. Jermaine. But this is something that, instead of an action item, we were planning on getting the community, the feedback from the staff, the students, the parents, which is what I mentioned several months ago. So to make it an agenda item was a little preemptive because we really don't have any of that input yet. We haven't had that workshop yet. We haven't sat down and put that letter out like we're looking for input for this so that we can change it in a way that's meaningful and appropriate and we do the right thing. But I do appreciate all the input that you're gathering because that's important to note. I can see it myself, and that's the reason why we had the attendance issue. The attendance is worse now than it was before, so it's not better like people stated that it was going to be. One of the other arguments was that the grades would be better, that the student would be better rested, and so on and so forth. So I'd like to see if there's any way we can gather up that data. But as far as the attendance data is concerned, that to me that data is in as far as I'm concerned, and it's not good. So we will be having a further discussion on this. Dr. Flowers?
Just one little thing. I remember when we voted on this, I think I said I voted kind of like with my elbow in the air because, and this is just a tiny sample, when I happened to meet kind of accidentally with some of the young people at the high school. I was meeting with my mentee, and I said, you know, what do people think about this? Because one of them said, oh, you mean we start later and we get out the same time? I said, no, that's not, that would be too good. But they said, but why? we're here, we're used to coming early. And they said, what about all the things that you do after school? And that was brought up right then. I think the research that was presented to us, all of us, and again, you can look at research in many different ways, but saying that, yes, our young people need more sleep, well, that's a given. That is a given. So this is a case too where whatever happens at home, that's something that the families really have to deal with. The fact that they're missing those last periods. So when they say, I wasn't here when you taught it, that's exactly what's going to happen. That's a big chunk of time for any students to be losing, a whole period. That to me is as much, if not more, concerning than a lot of this. So this definitely has to be addressed and remediated. Obviously, we're going into this, second quarter now, but keep gathering your information. That's what we need.
Can I just say really quick, and they're missing the same exact class. That's all I want to say, just that they're missing the same exact class because the classes don't rotate in high school anymore.
Right.
So 7th period, if it's English, just a mental note, it's always English. So it's just the same class because they're not rotating on it.
Right. So I don't believe that there's any action to be had on this. This is something that we are working on, and we're going to take action on it prior to the beginning of next. One way or the other, we're going to make our decision known and heard so that everybody's fully aware. The next item would be 4.8, request to change number of credits required for graduation from Rogers High School. Did anybody intend on speaking on this issue?
Mr. Chair, when we reduced it to 20 credits, it was to coincide with the state requirements, and I believe it gave more opportunity for the kids with electives, so I'd move that we table this item.
Second.
Motion to table has been made, seconded. It's non-debatable. 4.9, request for Newport School Committee's legal counsel to contact cell tower vendors related to contract compliance.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Gaines?
I would move that we table this, seeing that the city council is having a workshop on this very topic tomorrow night, and it's now a city issue, it's not our.
Great.
Motion to table due to the city's meeting tomorrow evening with those people, and our end of the deal is still the same, correct, Mr. Galvin? They've all been noticed.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, they've all been noticed, and
Okay.
unless you direct me to do otherwise, we're
No,
sitting
we've
tight.
been asked by the city council, they have some other options that they want to follow through with, so at this point in time, they've been noticed, the proper notification has been given to them. The next item are discussion items. 5.1 is a discussion item for behavioral support programs, BSP, IEPs, out-of-district placements, and so forth. I asked for this item to be put on discussion item, and we can't get into anything specific whatsoever. We're just looking at how the program is working within the schools. I asked that the administration come from all three campuses so that we can have an open discussion. I also asked that the superintendent have these meetings in-house with the groups on a regular basis so we can make sure that everything is working smoothly, that we have the appropriate staff to teach these children, if we're keeping them from ODP, meaning out-of-district placement, if we're going to keep them in-house, if we have the appropriate rooms for them, if we have the appropriate staff to train, that is trained and can teach them, and all of these things. Behavioral specialist is a different issue. It goes a little bit to the vein of somewhat of the changes and the challenges that Thompson is facing right now with the change of the way that the classes are being given there, and I guess the shuffling of the deck, you would call it. So short of me being the expert, which I'm not, and receiving multiple phone calls on this, I figured that we might as well bring it right out into the open and have the discussion in public, just to find out and make sure, with all the staff being here as well, that everybody's on the same page. Things are not going to be perfect. We understand that. It's a work in progress. It's a changing group of kids. but do we have the right things in place within the Newport Public Schools? And do we feel like we're getting better at this? We're remaining status quo, or we're losing ground? And that could be different in every campus. We might be doing well in one campus, we might be failing in another campus, but I don't want to hear that unless it's the absolute fact, a holistic approach that everything's going great. Because I don't care whatever it is that you're doing, everything's never great. So where can we make improvements? I want to hear it, I want the staff to hear it, and I want you guys to get together over the next few months with the superintendent, and I want to figure this out, because there's an awful lot of feedback from parents, and it needs to happen. So Lynn Grantham, who is our behavioral specialist administrator, was asked to sit over here for us and answer some questions, or at least give us an update on what we're doing. And then the staff was out there, if any one of us felt we needed to ask a question, or the staff feels like they want to have any input and don't feel that you're going to be able to have your input and there's going to be no repercussions or anything. This is your chance to speak freely, openly, respectfully, so that we can make this a better system. This is the whole idea. Let's make it better. Elaine?
So there's a number of different programs that have been in place since pretty much I started, and a lot of it is based on what current research tells us and trends. I can tell you, and I agree with you, no system is ever perfect. It's always constantly evolving and adapting, because dealing with social emotional issues and behavioral challenges is not an easy thing to deal with, especially in an educational setting. What's encouraging is the state just adopted social emotional standards that are based on the Cassell model, which we have already adopted in Newport, which is encouraging that the state's kind of following in line with what Newport is currently doing. I can tell you that the data has been very encouraging, specifically in Pell, specifically because it's more than just the behavior support that we're providing, but we're also providing a whole wraparound service, and we're also providing a lot of RTI, Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions to keep the student from entering into specialized programs in the first place. And that has made a huge impact. So having preventative measures like Kelso's Choice and Open Circle, and having a more robust RTI system for behaviorally or socially emotionally challenged students definitely has made a huge impact. But I can tell you that the influx of students coming into the district this year has been overwhelming. There has been a lot of students entering with significant needs that we are trying to wrap around and adjust our supports. So I don't know if you have specific questions, but the other area that we're having some difficulties is also with our English language learners. So when you have a massive influx of English language learners coming in and English language learners with social emotional issues, that's almost like a double challenge that we have to deal with internally. So Thompson has had, and Rogers both have the addition of the in-school restriction room, which was a result of finding solutions that is restorative in nature to keep students from leaving and being suspended. It also kind of falls in line with the state law that was passed in June of 2016 that gives specific guidelines for suspensions, as well as dealing with some compliance issues associated with suspending too many students. Is there any specific questions that you have? Or?
I have a couple, and maybe it'll pull out a couple of other ones. In specific to Thompson Middle School, I know at one point in time we had a mall or an area with guidance counselors, and we had enough staffing in there. Let's say a kid was getting ready to have some, just having a bad day, that they could go down and be diffused and then come back in. And I fear, or I feel, and I probably know that a lot of times we either A, don't have that staffing available, or that staffing's doing floating substitutions within the school, and therefore we're stripping the core group of folks that we need, or possibly we don't have people that are appropriately trained to deal with these kids socially and emotionally. We might have a para, but do we actually have staff on hand that can come and help diffuse the situation? And then how much training do we have within our department for that teacher because all of our teachers can't possibly be trained in this, to understand what a sign is coming on when a child is just feeling like they're going to, have a little bit of a situation.
Yeah, they feel like they're starting to unravel.
Do we have the appropriate training? I don't expect all of our teachers to be appropriately trained in this. I mean, if you're an English teacher, you're an English teacher. If you're a behavioral specialist, you're a behavioral specialist. So what I'm saying is, with all the phone calls, and I understand with the influx of students, I mean, where are we at as a district? I mean, when can we say, maybe we need to resort back to ODP in certain situations, and then ease the burden of the current staff that we have, so that we don't lose kids that are on the edge because we can't attend to those, because we're constantly focusing on just a very small handful of very difficult children, which is taking up a lot of the time of our staff. And I don't think that it's unfair or it's mean or it's like that, but if we can't appropriately handle the couple and then a whole lot fail because of it, then are we doing the best that we possibly can do for the whole population of the school? And I know I've had enough complaints from enough different people that some of this has to exist within our schools.
So you're making some very good points. One of the biggest issues is building capacity in the district. And I know Dr. Bean and I have worked very closely because that was a need that was expressed by a lot of faculty members. And so with our strands of PD that we created, there is a huge section on mindfulness. There is a section on conscious discipline, as well as practices in trauma-informed instruction that's provided that teachers can sign up for. The pieces that you're bringing in is there is like a protocol and policy that will lead a student down the pathway to an out-of-district placement. One of the things that we're required to do by law is the continuum of special education, which means that we can't quickly jump to an out-of-district placement because it's way down in the continuum. Mm-hmm. So there's a practice and policy that we use to make those decisions. There are few exceptions that would make a quick placement outside of Newport Public Schools. However, that's usually done with conjunction of the superintendent because it usually is a drastic step and it usually involves safety of the building that makes fast decisions. So the one thing I have stressed to the teams is that us making a decision to send a kid to an out-of-district placement is a very careful decision because the research shows that out-of-district placed students have a significant reduction of their chances of graduating high school. That is a big fact that we have to consider. Also, I think that if you have walked into a lot of these therapeutic placements, most people would be very uncomfortable with the prospect of having that be a long-term solution. That doesn't mean that we don't make those decisions, and it's done through the IEP team, and it's done in a very thoughtful manner, but we're not sending them to a better place. We're not. We are pretty much getting them out of our district, and we're just buying ourselves time. And sometimes with the younger children, a reset makes a huge difference, but the older the child gets, the greater the chance that they are not going to complete high school if we put them in an out-of-district placement. So we have to be very clear that everybody in the table has tried everything before we try to make the decision. It's also not financially sound it is not financially responsible to quickly go to that measure because it is a very expensive proposition. The average out-of-district placement can range between $30,000 and $140,000 depending on student need. Average transportation cost is about $15,000 to $16,000 now per student. So when we're making those decisions, we really want to be saying to ourselves, we've tried everything before we make that decision. The second piece is we do have a full-time, position with 2 licensed mental health clinicians to help. Both of them have significant clinical support in helping work with students. We also have a full-time social worker. We're working closely with the agencies in the area to help provide more services. We are trying to bring more services into Thompson and into Rogers to help support students, specifically students that are having social emotional needs that are beyond what an IEP can cover. So I'm not sure if I answered all of your questions, but it is one of those things that we have been looking at very closely. And I can tell you that Thompson and Rogers and Pell have access to a number of consultants to help support the needs of specific students. We have contracts with Autism Project, Momentum, Pathways, Perspectives, Dr. Ozawicki. We have 2 BCBAs that we work with closely. That's a board-certified behavior analysis. So we have tools in place to help support students, but I think that it really is going to come to building capacity and continue to build capacity, and a lot of that's done through professional development.
A couple of other things. As far as what's our ratio of students in need versus staff that we have, and I'd imagine there's, you know, everybody would love to have enough money to have enough staff to deal with these kids more closely. That's one of the things. And the other issue is with the ODP. I clearly understand the fact that we want to do the best that we can, but if one child is consuming all of our staff, a lot of the times, or several students are consuming all of our staff, then who are we really helping? We're helping that one child, which is great, but then is it in an adverse way affecting the rest of the students who have to sit and wait for a sub to come in because the student gets taken out of the classroom continuously? So what is the adverse effect? That's the other side of it. I fully understand, and then I get it. Nobody wants to tell the student we just can't help them, but if you look at your capacity and you look at what's right for all, sometimes I get it. Maybe we can push the reset button. Another couple questions I have is I don't know the answer to these questions, so I don't know if we have these in place or not. But you know, how often do you go in and sit down and observe these behaviors in each of the 3 campuses, and then how do you take suggestions from the staff? Is it anonymously? Is it through and your feedback to them? Let's say they have a suggestion like, hey, this just isn't particularly working, but this other issue worked. Does that come through the building principals? I mean, how do you deal with, like, there's got to be some suggestive offers from our staff that may see something that possibly works, and then...
No, I'm absolutely open to any idea that anybody has. I can tell you that I'm on all 4 campuses, because including the Pell Annex, there's 4. At least one day a week, I have team meetings with the highly specialized programs that require a lot of extra support. So like on Mondays, I'm generally at Pell. Wednesdays, I'm generally at Thompson. Thursdays, I'm at Thompson. And Fridays, I'm usually at Rogers. And then Tuesday usually is when there's a need, or I do my out-of-district placement meetings. So I can tell you that I'm on campus a lot. I can tell you that I'm usually pretty responsive to teacher suggestions because, they're in the trenches. They're the ones that are the first in line. So their specific input is very valuable. I try to be responsive to their needs. Most of the staff in the district have my cell phone number, and they have no problems calling me, texting me, emailing me. So generally speaking, I do sit in a lot of IEP meetings, specifically IEP meetings that could be a little challenging, that we need a little bit more of a creative approach. So any best idea wins, really. If it follows state laws, if it follows federal laws, if it's best practice, and it's research driven, Newport is pretty open to trying anything that is suggested. I have put everything that I could possibly think of, and some of the best ideas didn't even come from me, they came from staff. So there's no ego here. Whoever has the best idea, I'm open and willing to hear anything. And I know that even parents that go to Colleen or to the principals, they generally contact me pretty quickly, and we try to put a plan in place. So a lot of our students that have specific needs, and I would love to hear, and I know we can't probably do it in this public forum, what you're speaking to, because it sounds like you have a specific idea and a specific example in your head, but
Not necessarily. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that everybody understood that we get it, we understand, and we want to work together to get this to become a better system.
And we're still evolving. I mean, in a lot of ways, we're flying the plane and building it at the same time because there is such a huge need, and we can't wait. We have to react. And I still think that oftentimes I'm walking through the district with a fire extinguisher, putting out fires, and I want to be more preventive and be more proactive. but we still are dealing with high need in specific schools.
And then I guess the
And
final...
also the unexpected students that we didn't plan for.
Right, I mean, that's the unknown. We get that with the placements and such that we have, but I guess the final piece to the puzzle is previously we had like an ODP versus in-house cost, and we're gonna need that for our future budget coming forward. We're gonna start our budget season a lot earlier this year. So the wish list, where we are today currently with keeping these students in-house, I believe a couple of years ago we were almost cost neutral, and now I think we've added some staff, so I'm not sure if we're cost neutral anymore. But I mean, I'm not asking you to answer on that
No,
tonight.
you were actually given a piece of paper that kind of did that cost analysis. I don't know if you have that.
We do have it.
It's right here. I have questions on.
So I actually have a couple questions. Go ahead, Becky, you can go.
All right, well, on the cost analysis, I was the one that asked if we could do that, just because you have to keep that in mind, because
Agreed.
you do. So I think a couple of the premises, I think it was built on, where you analyze what we have now and what the potential numbers could be. Is it correct in I think you said that if 119 kids went out of district placement, that's what you built that on?
No, what I based it on is our current program and what it costs for our current program, and then if we were to eliminate certain programs, what the potential number of students that could be outplaced would be if we eliminated that program.
True, but I guess so really to compare it though, you can't compare it with 119 kids out of district. I mean, it would need a little bit different analysis, because another premise that doesn't work is that the cost of transportation, when you move one kid to Bradley, when you add the second kid, I doubt that it costs another $16,000.
Believe it or not, it is really that expensive.
No, I understand it's expensive, but the bus itself, whether you have one there or four going to the same building, it's the same cost.
But it would also depend on if Bradley will accept the referral and if there's openings, because I can tell you a lot of schools don't have openings.
I'm just talking about one bus going to any particular school. It's pretty much, you can't really add another $16,000 per bus, because that doesn't work. And then also what we didn't break out was there is a cost to special ed buses, and I don't see it on here for what we're doing presently.
That's where I base that analysis. The cost of special education busing is around $16,000 per student.
Did you build that into the current price?
I took the ODP average and I built it into the current price.
I just don't see that on here, that's all. I don't see where you put that, put the busing, the current busing in there, that's all.
I put it as part of the entire ODP cost. The ODP cost average is $60,000, and that includes tuition, and then it says cost of transportation, $16,000.
That's for out of district.
That is for out of district. That is correct.
I'm saying in district, I don't see a number of what.
Oh, I didn't do an analysis of in-district busing costs.
So you see that
No, I know what you're saying.
That
Yep.
number 2 needs to be pulled, so we can't really do a comparison unless we kind of make sure we compare apples to apples on this. So I just, at this point, like we're $3 million difference, but I wonder if we were to work at this, I don't know that we would be, because I don't ever see 119 kids going away.
But I can't.
You have to have the programs going here, so it would just be those kids. The most I think we've ever had out was 46.
No, when I came, it was 57.
It was 57. Oh, okay, I take that back. I went back, but couldn't find it. So, okay, that was the money thing. But, besides the money, I'm concerned with retaining staff, both teachers and paras. So, it seems as if it's a very difficult, and the burnout rate amongst behavior classrooms is very high. I don't know that you get the youngest teachers often because they want to get into the school district, and the way to get in, you go to Salve, get your special ed degree, and you also get your regular. So these kids come in with not a lot of experience, and you need your most experienced teachers. If there ever were a place, this is where it is. And I know that even the age are having trouble retaining them. I hear there are problems getting kids to and from classes, like some of these kids at Thompson, there's no one to accompany them to their classes because we're missing aides,
That is correct. We currently just did interviews to replace the aides. They are not currently fully staffed at Thompson right now.
And I do know that some of the teachers have some, real concerns about the timeout room, the in-school, what do we call it, in-school suspension.
in terms of making sure that we're all on the same page. There's no cell phones at the high school. There's no, these kids are doing the kind of work they're supposed to be doing. And I just don't know, have we had meetings to check on those things, with those teachers? Because it sounds like it's a time when you need to get all the teachers back in and say, what's working, what's not,
That's something that occurs with the principals and the teachers that are in the in-school restriction room,
But not.
and myself.
But it needs to be the regular classroom teachers, because they have some great concerns, I think, that are, affecting how they are able to, function.
Okay, so that would be great to hear that feedback, because the general feedback I got was that overall, there's still some bumps, but that they are appreciative of the in-school restriction room.
Okay, all right, so that's good. So we want, what?
I am going to put them on the spot. Do you want to speak to them?
Yeah, Mr. Canini even, I guess middle school seems to where we have our.
We're going to need you up here, Mr. Canine.
You can definitely hear it. Ever hear it?
You can't be on.
They can't hear you on television.
Mr. Chairman, I just had, could we just, a couple of questions on 5.1, that document, while we're, so those numbers on the bottom, are those, do I read that right, that they're as of November 7th?
Yes, those numbers were the day I constructed the report, November 7th.
So that day we did have the 19, I think it's 19 paras shown at Thompson. We had those on that day?
They were not, no, we have 19 positions, but it is not fully staffed right now.
How many do we have? Right
We
now?
are short 3 at Thompson, which we just conducted interviews, and we should be giving recommendations to the superintendent to replace those 3 staff.
So we have 16 of the 19 in place.
That is correct.
Okay. And then just one more question, sorry, Chair, just one more question on the top. On the top documents there, I want to make sure that I'm understanding so in the year 2013, there were 407 special ed students.
Yeah, total of 407
In the
and
month of
44 were because the census is done in October, December, May, and over the summer. But the big numbers that they use for configuring is December census is used for funding purposes. October census is used for ratio purposes. So that I use the October census because it was the closest to the November date, but we have the December 1st census that we have to propose, so we'll have those numbers in December 15th, which will change because Newport is very variable when it comes to our special ed population, with people moving in and out.
So just reading across that line, so 407, we had 44 out of district placement in 2013 in October.
Yes. Well, that's the average. That's as of October. We did the October census. 44 students were out in that snapshot.
Right. For October in 2013.
Yep.
And at the end, the total cost at that time was $2,148,000 for the month of October.
No, the $2,148,000 was the entire year's expenses of out-of-district placements. That was the actual amount that we spent on out-of-district placements.
Okay, so then 2017, same information you come across, 457 students in October, 26 are out of district for a total cost of $1.943 million for the year.
Well, that's what we're projected. That is what we have right now. That's not what we've spent. We are projecting 1943 because basically what we've been doing is taking a 5-year average, and that's where we've been giving the money. Like last year, we definitely did not spend what was budgeted. What was budgeted last year was close to $2 million, and we only spent 1.7.
So down the bottom, then, what does the 8.9 million number represent?
The 8.9 million represents if the programs went away. That's the potential financial risk of eliminating programs and staff.
So if the programs went away, I'm just confused because the 1.9 million is...
That is just specific ODP cost. The down number is, I was asked to make a comparison with a cost analysis with our paras and our special education teachers to let you know how much does the programs we currently have cost. If we were to eliminate those programs and some of those students went out, and what I put was the potential, that doesn't mean they're definitely going out, but the potential of students that could leave the district with the elimination of the program, and we had to use out-of-district placements as our resource of dealing with challenging students, the projected cost would be $8.9 million.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further questions? Mr. Canady? Ms. Bowling, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, I just wanted, from your perspective, what could happen to improve what's going on? You know, this is your time to give us your expertise.
No, I did communicate with the school committee at the end of the year, too, about my concerns last year. My concerns last year were they took away ALP from Thompson and they took away the in-school suspension room, and our suspension numbers rose dramatically. This year they did add the ISR back, but what the 3 aid positions that you're talking about now, they're from the same program. So we're 3 short from 1 program. And I can only speak to Thompson right now, and it has completely inundated my office with those students from that program because we don't have enough staff to walk them to class and manage their behaviors. But time will tell if that staffing will help the referrals to me.
How about the fact that they put the behavior students with the ALP? Is that being successful right now, or is that they're not with the ALP at the Thompson? There's only 3 students. Is that working?
I really don't know their academics. I don't know if they're currently passing the first quarter, but certainly there's been lots of referrals to my office. We're without a behavior specialist for the program, which I think is a major piece. I think the 2 teachers are doing a great job, doing the best they can. I think a behavior specialist would be very helpful to allow them to teach rather than to chase kids around all day.
Can I ask you a question? Is there an actual behavior classroom in Thompson? Okay, I just have that one question.
The question was, is there an actual behavior special classroom at Thompson?
Yes.
There is. My question is, if you know, how long have we been short these staffers that we're looking for currently, these 3 folks?
Yeah, end of September.
Why is it taking this long to request to get them put in?
Good question.
It's not the request, it's following the policy and procedure and hiring staff. It has to be posted for a certain amount of time. Then we have to conduct a full committee interview. Then we have to give the recommendations to the superintendent. Then they have to get vetted through the school committee. They have to be approved as Newport employees. It's not like a one-day process. I can tell you that I have reached out to agencies to see if we can get temporary support. And we do have 1 person coming, but at the same time, they are unable to provide us with any kind of behavior support because they're inundated too. A lot of the behavior agencies, which is why I contracted like 4 or 5 of them, because they don't have the support to give us. We have a couple of things in place, but they don't have the means to give us support. So I can tell you that the recommendations are going to the superintendent, and they should. And one of the things that Colleen had stated was as soon as they get cleared through her and through the Newport system, then we will start them immediately. So we're hoping to have most of the if not all the support in place by Monday after Thanksgiving break.
Thank you.
But I can say that so far the start of the year at Thompson has been terrific, with the exception of this lack of staff. I think if we have the staff, I think Thompson will definitely run like a well-oiled machine like we've done in the past.
Okay. Hopefully we get those folks found and vetted. And
They've been found. Now we just have to get through you guys.
okay. And on tonight's docket?
No, you're
Okay.
not.
Any further questions?
I have a question.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Fiorte, community organizer in the north end of the city of Newport. My question to you is, I'm going to go as back as maybe 12, 15 years ago.
The school department had a viable committee that was called Equity in Education, which was community leaders, that sat with the superintendent. Back in the days, it was Mercedes Colomb, and we sat with school staff, with community leaders, in helping the school department suffice a lot of these issues. And people move away, people, gone and left, whatever it is, it never came back. It's not just the school department's issue. It is a community issue. And we've also always heard it takes a village. We're just waiting to see when the school department is inviting the community to come and help them. And I ask also, have we talked about mentoring programs to help suffice some of those issues with kids that can come into the school to help pull those kids aside that are taking away from those kids that really want to learn and while they're in school, is looking at those community leaders that can come in, mentoring programs that can come in and have that one-on-one with those needed attention kids. And my question to you is, in talking about the English learning kids that also, with the language barrier, also brings behavior, what is the ratio of staff that is bilingual that are employed by the school department that can help suffice communication with these kids that the English is not their first language, and also looking at interpreting and translating for those parents to help them suffice what the issues are, because communication has to happen with these families as well.
Thank you. The superintendent can answer the exact name of the groupings that I know we have these groupings that you talk about.
Okay.
And it'd be great to get your information, and if you have
Sure.
another way to get the message out to a different group of folks that maybe
Yes.
were involved before, that'd be wonderful. And just get your information.
Would love that. No, we
Thank
know
you.
we know each other.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes.
that's fantastic.
I was gonna
Yes.
say.
Absolutely fantastic.
So we need to get it back because we know the issues that you're facing, but again, it should not just be your burden. And we need that feedback, that open dialogue with the community, with the parents, and constant feedback helped back then, and I think we need to bring it back.
And we appreciate
Whereas we're in a deadlock now, and it just shouldn't happen. It's everyone's problem, I think.
That is
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
much.
you very much.
And also on the ratio of staff that's bilingual, is there?
4 at Pell,
Okay.
3 at Thompson, and 3 at Rogers, I believe.
Okay.
And then we have a district interpreter. I'm getting fed information, but I'm also very clear that I know Mr. Hano has already brought up with Mr. Vance.
Okay.
They're trying a little pilot program with one of the translators. Do I have that correct?
We are starting the process of, we have a district, because we received some unexpected money from English language learning.
Okay.
So we have put in a district interpreter, so there is an interpreter at every building during certain days to help support the dean. But Mr. Vance and Mr. Hano had specifically asked for Rogers to have a district interpreter. We have completed the job description. It's about to go to Colleen to review. We have already vetted it through the C94 for comp worth to determine what the job is worth. And so it's in the final stages and hoping to be posted within the next week or so, so that we can have a pilot program at Rogers specifically with and having an interpreter that is connected with the dean's office.
Okay.
I can tell you that all parents, we usually, if we know that English is not their first language, specifically if there's any kind of team meeting, they are offered an interpreter.
Right.
And we will try to provide a community member so that it stays in the community, but we also have access to translation agencies so that we can have access to an interpreter whenever it's requested. Finally, all documents, we are moving towards having almost all the documents translated, but all special education documents, any kind of report, any kind of IEP, all of those are available in the parent's native language, and we translate all the documents. And we have a special educator who is bilingual to be able to perform any kind of assessments she's bilingual in Spanish.
Okay.
So if a parent needs, or if a parent's requesting, or if the team feels that the assessment should be done in the child's native language, that's made available to them as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh yeah, we have para-educators that are bilingual as well.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions? Thank you very much for the update, and please, whatever it is that we need to do to make it a better system, we gotta make it a better system. Thank you.
Well, I'm
Thank you
open to
guys.
any ideas.
The next discussion item, I don't believe Mr. Harrop is here, but it was a discussion. It says Superintendent of Facilities has submitted a draft CIP proposal for discussion. Doesn't look like there's a whole lot of cost in this upcoming fiscal year for capital improvements. It looks like a pretty small number.
Correct.
And in the next, there's a discussion item coming up next for facilities and space, and we're gonna kind of segue right into that, so I don't think there's a whole lot of discussion on this right now. The Career Tech expansion plan.
Mr. Young and Ms. Clark are here
Yes.
this evening. Mr. Young?
Just if you could just give us a briefing on where we're going. I know there's a lot of exciting things going on in the Career Tech program. It's the buzzword all around the country, actually. You can't pick up a paper in any big district that's not saying there's they're looking for the workforce to go rebuild after all these natural disasters and things of that nature. And just in discussions with some folks traveling, I'm hearing the same things. You just can't get folks that want to work or show up on time, and I know you guys are doing a good job with doing, getting the kids to look people in the eye. And there's a new program down in Georgia where it's called Shake and Smile. Shake the hand and smile and talk to the person. Get off your phones and take a look. But that's one aspect of the job. But if you could just kind of brief us on the rest of what's going on.
Yeah, so we're covering that particular item in our workplace learning program. So that program started in our P-TECH piece, and we saw the benefits of that program. So we started to offer it to some of our career tech programs as well. So we do have students in the 9th grade entry level that are taking both a traditional CTE program and they're taking that workplace learning program where they're getting those skills that they need to go into the workplace. So some of the things that we are seeing is that we're getting phone calls probably weekly looking for people to fill vacancies in the workforce. I just got 2 emails today for the Navy facility program, which is an excellent job opportunity where they can start at full benefits, and they'll pay for them to get an associate degree at New England Tech. And one of the things that they said, so I asked them, what program do you need them? He says, I don't need a program, just give me a guy who's going to want to come to work, put his phone away, do the job, and then also who wants to to stick around. So those are the kind of things that we're working with in our level 1 programs as well. So, but as far as expansion, we are exploring some options right now. As you know, we're looking at connecting with Electric Boat and their maritime pipe fitting and maritime electrical piece with that. So we've visited their Westerly training program down there. We've had some meetings with them. We've had some facility layouts, facility drawings. Now we're just looking at, as you can see in there, there's some significant funding. So now we're looking at some funding options to fill those slots. We've also met with some hospitality, hotel management, event planning folks. We're in Newport, where that's a pretty, tourism is a pretty popular program, so we have some options for that as well, and some of the maritime trades programs as well. So right now we're in the exploration phase, just getting all the information, and then we'll be able to present some more detailed information on where we're going. But we are meeting at least monthly with some of the career tech programs. I just recently returned from a career tech center in Vermont. I spent a week up there visiting their school. As you know, we're going through NEASC this year. It's pretty significant inspection, so we're also looking for some feedback from them on some of the directions that we need to go in as well.
Excellent. And don't forget to give me the wish list. If we have some tools and stuff, I might have some angels out there that are willing to help us out with the upfitting. I know tools are a huge expense. We're working on getting some monies from the state to kind of help us retool some of those, because I know a lot of the reports in here show that you either don't have enough equipment or the equipment's outdated.
Yes. Yep.
And that just happens as these things. I know, especially in auto mechanics, I know a lot of that equipment is pretty outdated.
It's changing fast as well.
So yeah.
And also you can see in there that our numbers are growing. So our level 1s and 2s exceed our level 3s and 4s dramatically. So we're also looking at some more opportunities to get students out, especially when they hit their senior year. So they won't be working inside the school, they'll be doing co-ops or internships out in the area as well to get that workplace learning experience.
And with the, I'm sorry, Mrs. Gaines, with the scheduling issue, I know that cosmetology students, they really just don't seem to have enough seat time in the course. They need a lot of hours to get this certification, and hopefully that's something, I don't know how the scheduling folks can, that's gonna be like that's gonna be a toughie to deal with. I don't know how you deal with that, but as long as they're aware of the fact that they need those extra hours to achieve that.
Ms. Martin, our teacher in there, works her magic in getting students the extra time, but they've also lowered, for this incoming class, they lowered it from 1,500 hours to 1,200 hours, so it gives us a little more flexibility on that, but that's a difficult piece to fill.
Mrs. Gaines?
You mentioned NEAS. Is this an accreditation year?
Yes, it's a 10-year accreditation year, yes.
Ms. Bowler?
Do you foresee any problems of equipment we're short or something that we're going to get, that we need to take care of beforehand so that we're not in trouble?
They look more at curriculum, instruction, assessment than that tool right there is outdated. So they want to see, it is a self-reflection that we write and present that to themselves. I'm sure they're going to say that, yes, we need to upgrade, our equipment, but at the same time in our self-survey, we'll say that as well. So, yes.
Okay, one other question. I noticed in automotive technology you have low completion rates and low certification rates. So, no one likes to see that, of course. So do you have ideas on how to improve that? Or, is it something you want to eliminate that particular one, or what do you want to talk about?
Let's see.
I think we need to look at, as a district and as a regional school, what the opportunities are out there in that field. Where are students going? How many of them are actually pursuing an automotive career? And how many of them are treating this as a hobby? There are jobs out there, but the majority of our students are not going into those fields. They're not getting the certifications. So I think it makes sense to take a look at it, take a step back and see how we could evolve the program while maybe keeping some aspects of automotive, but also looking at diesel engines and maybe some kind of marine, not like the electric boat marine, but like boats and fabricating boats, those types of engines. All of our programs have been under some kind of evolution, and our carpentry program, which your son was in, went from residential carpentry to now construction technology, and that's one example of how we're looking at 3D printing, computer-aided design. They're not just banging nails, they're learning all these other technologies. So we really need to make sure we're evolving our programs to keep up with 21st century jobs.
And the hard part about auto is now it's more specialized. So Ford wants their employers to go to their Ford training. Toyota wants them to go to Toyota, BMW to BMW. So it's not like you leave and you go to mom and pop's fix-it shop any longer. It's a lot more detailed. So even on the collision side, so statewide auto is a challenge throughout Rhode Island.
And then I noticed that our teachers retiring this year. So if there was ever a year that to change it, it would probably be this year. Is that why you put out that job specification? So, which was a good idea, because there are not many people I would think that are certified with a teaching degree and an automotive.
No, it's difficult, and RIDE isn't much help on getting people certified in CTE.
Working on that, right, Mrs. Gaines?
There has been, yes, that has been discussed.
To help us out here.
About looking at credentialing CTE instruction.
Lots of discussion, but need to
Maybe not
put in place.
necessarily bachelor's degrees, but looking at certifying.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
No, I just wanted to comment that despite, some of the areas you have to look at here, when the students get involved in the competitions, they do very well. So obviously there's a lot of success.
Yes.
And looking at some of the numbers, if you get this is probably something that everyone who's working in the academic area with the students, is to get them to be dedicated to what they're doing and complete their tasks. And it's no matter what you're teaching, you really have to, from the earliest years, get the kids to be committed to being successful, no matter what they decide to go in. That's the important point. Something that we all, the whole community has to work on.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. The next item up for discussion is the final discussion item for this evening. It's district and facility space. After Ryan gave us our report of the shape of the buildings all across our state of Rhode Island, the 300 plus campuses, and we found out we were number one in one thing, and it wasn't something we wanted to be number one in. As far as how all the data shut down, our school is in, Rogers High School is in rough shape. It's not advisable to put good money after bad, and that's something that I wanted to, we're going to start to look at folks to get on a committee to look at the potential of what we really want to do there, but we kind of want to fast track it. So I don't know the exact method of how we're going to put it out there, but I'm going to formulate a committee, myself, I believe, Kathy Sylvia, and another one of the colleagues up here would be a member of that group, and then we're going to want the community input, looking at sites, actuality of doing it, and really expediency, not in a rushing manner, but in the fact that the money's going to come out sooner than we think from Rhode Island Department of Education, so we kind of want to be queued up to do it. Dovetailed into that, we've been talking, and they've been listening about how this school is beautiful, but it's too small. And we have a lease that's running out with JFK very shortly. So if we could combine the two pieces into one bond, that would be something I think that would be favorable to the community, because you would kill two birds with one stone, and we would be pretty much set for facilities for the next foreseeable future, which would be a good thing. And I know that the money's going to come out, and we talked about it. So if there is anybody that, we know we have a report already that has been done and taken, and I don't know if it's back out on the website or if it's available to be seen online, but it's a pretty lengthy document of 3 different options to do right here on this campus for the expansion of the Pell School. So that's something we can put out, I guess, up here on an email list if you want to look at that. And then as far as Rogers is concerned, that's a whole other ballgame. That's like, where is the appropriate place to put it with the land getting freed up here on the north end? We talked to the state already as far as what are they potentially going to do. I've also heard some feedback from the general public, like, you know, you guys just put a big roof on the school, and why would you do such a thing? Well, the roof was leaking. It probably needed to be replaced 10 years ago. The fact of the matter is the whole infrastructure of the school needs to be overhauled. It's outlived its life expectancy. With that, I would also like to develop some type of a policy that lives beyond a school committee. I mean, the city has a charter that will dictate certain things shall happen, and I would like to build something in that shall happen as far as maintenance of effort, that this doesn't happen again, that we can put aside a certain amount of money so when we do get these new schools, that we maintain them to the appropriate levels, where we don't have an event down at Rogers High School where pretty much everything, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, all that stuff is done. The last major renovation, I believe, down there was in 94 or 95, where they redid all the glass, and, you know, I mean, the school is just, the report speaks for itself. So with that being said, I don't know that there's a whole lot of discussion to be had, but I wanted to bring it up because I wanted people to know and go on the record that we're going to be soliciting folks from the community to come step up and help look at this project. And then once we decide what we want to do, to then go out and speak to your friends and neighbors of what, you know, the what's and the whys. We'll do the best we can as far as putting it in the paper and showing people, you know, what it is we think we need. But this is going to be another big community effort. Suggestions of whether we're going to partner up with Middletown or not. If we go down the road of waiting to, I mean, Ride suggested that Middletown and Newport get together, but if we wait another several years or who knows how long until the two communities decide decide to come together, the money's not going to be there. Some other community's going to get the money. We might be in the top 5 worst campuses, but the other schools are going to be lined up either behind us or next to us looking for the monies. And I think now the time is primed for it. It's a big piece of money, but I think it's what we need to do for our education. I mean, we got to have a safe, dry, warm place for these kids to learn. We also have a campus down there that we're looking at different bids for, securing the place, and the bids to just simply secure the place with all the doors and stuff we have is ridiculous. So we could do a lot of things that's going to better the entire experience at high school if we go ahead, but we're certainly going to need the input from our neighbors and friends within the community. So if there's any further discussion on that, I mean, I wanted to just bring it up tonight and mention that we are getting that ball rolling as quickly as possible. I guess the best way to get it out there would be however we would inform, I don't know, the best way, Superintendent Germain, to inform the parents, A, and then obviously we need all the stakeholders need to be involved. The regular taxpayer, the parents, the council, the homeowners, the business people, all of those folks this needs to be a community-wide effort on what we're going to do. Everybody needs to be involved in what's going on. So
We can certainly put it out on our One Newport app. We can put it on our listserv. We can also maybe have an article about it.
We'll advertise it.
And also for the paper, people can email any of you and say they're interested in being on the committee.
Right. But that's going to be coming up very shortly. I say, I think they're looking at opening. When are they going to open up the? When are they supposed to potentially open up the funding for this, Mrs. Gaines? I thought they said sometime shortly after the new year, but I'm not 100% certain that that's going to happen. So we kind of want to get in the queue, up and running. Whose report? Rides?
No, the building
is due to ride?
State building.
Okay.
Recommendation is due to.
There are meetings going on now, and in your backup,
Right.
there are meetings that community people can now attend, and the next one is, there was one today at room B, and then they are having regular meetings, and I can send that to you. But I was informed by RIDE that if we would like to really be considered, you'll see a correspondence from RIDE to me. It starts on your second page of backup, and there's a necessity guide document with application timelines and requirements.
Okay.
And they're hoping, I heard the same thing, they're hoping by January, it's very aggressive, to come out to alert us about the potential of when we fill out this checklist, if we can go above 35% reimbursement and then continue to go higher based upon, because I believe we're right, we're kind of the highest. Well, all right, I can't say that, you can.
There will be incentives that will push that 1% up.
Right, that's all part of the process. So in any event, very soon enough, we're going to have at least a meeting to get the group together and see, and just kind of lay it out there what we expect, and if people want to do it, that's great, and more than welcome any and all suggestions on this particular issue. The next would be on the consent agenda. We have approval of minutes.
So moved.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted. The approval of minutes is approved. Personnel actions. Appointments, transfers, leave of absence, and retirements.
Mr. Chair, I am requesting to remove from superintendent's recommendation A1 and B2.
Chairman, I move acceptance of personnel actions. With the exceptions. Except can we put those aside?
Say that again?
I just moved the acceptance of personnel actions with the exceptions noted.
The exception would be the superintendent would like to remove from this agenda A1.
And B2.
And Mr. Gomes, Ms. Gaines, you made the motion.
I made the motion, there was no second.
Is there a second to that? Dr. Flowers, any discussion?
I would just like, Mr. Chairman, I would ask, rather than pull those from the consent, could we pull those items A1, A2, and A3 for discussion in executive session after the meeting?
A1, A2, and A3?
Yes.
Wait, and then the B one too. You have individuals.
Then the B.
We have to come out and report out anything that we need to vote on. But I think for the purposes of executive session,
Don't the individuals have to be listed out? No, not for to appoint them to a job.
Mr. Gowan,
If you're discussing them, yes, there are other exceptions on your executive session that could be applicable.
what about the position only, not the name?
Well, they would probably fall under the other exceptions, Mr. Chair.
So
So
we
it's
can,
available to you.
so we can discuss it and then come out and report out if we make a
Yes.
decision.
I want to pull another one too. We need to pull the, under, transfers, number 2.
We did say that.
Yeah. No, you said 1, 2, and 3 under A.
And B2.
B2.
And B2, okay, I missed the B2. So you're pulling B2, I just want to make sure we
Well,
have that full.
we want to hold them for.
Hold them for,
Discussion in executive session.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any in favor to that amendment? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted. So now I guess we're holding those, so now we need a motion to accept the rest, correct?
Right.
So the motion now would be to accept the remainder of the personnel actions.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve 6.3.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So noted. 7.0 correspondence. Rhode Island Foundation grant. Superintendent Jermaine, would you like to just briefly let us know what this was about?
Yes, this is the official notification that ties into the work project you approved tonight to show that we have the money for the project.
Fantastic. That is Rhode Island Foundation, the $40,000 grant they gave us to do the scheduling report. The next reports will be reports from the superintendent and staff, and we will bundle them up for 8.1 through 8.7. It's expenditure and revenue, restricted grants, college career readiness report, enrollment reports, homeless reports, absenteeism and truancy reduction initiative update, and superintendent's update partnerships and collaboration. Superintendent Jermaine?
I ask that the reports be accepted as presented. I would particularly like to note that Kerry Clark's College and Career Readiness report, 8.3. You'll notice all the highlights and the great work you've already mentioned that's going on at the Career and Tech program. I think they were a bit modest in the successes that are going on. And I also would like to point out for the children that are now at CCRI that are sophomores in high school, some of those children will have 9 to 15 college credits at the end of their high school sophomore year due to some of these programs.
How many do they need for an associate's degree? 60.
There you go, Mrs. Boland, she's raised many children. She now has 60.
So there's been a motion to accept them, or actually the suggestion from the superintendent.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, second.
Any discussion? I have some discussion on 8.4, enrollment reports. I want to look at page, I don't know that they're numbered. It's the second page, the first page at the top, 2017-18 Public School Annual Enrollment Summary. And then you flip that page and it says District Enrollment.
Which number are you talking about?
I guess it's,
8.4.
on 8.4, I'm sorry,
Okay,
Dr.
good
Flowers.
enough, thank you.
The enrollment reports. I'm looking at this report, Superintendent Jermaine, and I'm zeroing in on the 9th grade. The enrollment report is much larger than any other group in the school district, and I would like for you to explain to me why that is.
The 9th grade had a large class, but we also have several students that did not retain, I should say, did not attain enough credits to be promoted to 10th grade. Mr. Vance and his team are looking at that. We're also looking at, we have some students that are registered as freshmen that have been listed as a freshman for consecutive years in a row. And Mr. Vance and Mr. Merritt, who are no longer here, they must have just left. They're going through those names person by person with the guidance department to take a look at what we can do to either get interventions, or we're going to work with the community school to see if those children need to go to adult ed.
Now, when you say several, what number is several?
At one point in time, there was about 20 to 30. When we first looked at it, we thought it was much higher. My understanding is at this point in time, it's approximately about 30 of those 210 are students, not necessarily from just last year, maybe from multiple years. And that's what we need to look at and have a further discussion on with them. Some are, and some, the question was, and they are still attending school, and that's where Mr. Merritt comes in. Some are not, and that's what we need to do. We're wondering why they're still on the rolls.
And that's going to lower our graduation, correct?
We have had that discussion as recently as today's Tuesday. I think we had it right before the long weekend, and yes, we're going to have to take a look at that. Doreen Schlockman's working with Mr. Vance on it.
What do we have in place? I would imagine this is something that, this number's been in here the whole time. I just zeroed in on it finally, but it's been in here since September, I believe. The
Correct.
same high number. When were we aware of it as a district, other than just the number being placed in front of us? We're aware of it simply due to the fact that the number's sitting there on the page. But before I inquired, when was it brought to your attention, and what do we have in place so that such a large number of our students cannot proceed to the next grade? What do we have in place to not have this happen again, or at least help these students get to the next grade? If you're telling me some of them have spent more than 2, this could be their third. Let me get this correct. You're saying some of these students might be having their 3rd year in the 9th grade?
There are a few that are, yes, and that's part of the problem with the attendance, and we're identifying the reasons why this wasn't brought to anyone's attention without someone asking about it. So what we have going on right now is what you heard earlier is the credit recovery program, and that's why we wanted the credit recovery program to start now instead of waiting till the end of the year. Because what we're finding is some students were being carried on the rolls, they were not doing their work, then there was the thinking they were going to go to summer school or just earn credits and easily go on to the next level, and that's not what's been happening. So the guidance department, Mr. Crowley's working with them, and Mr. Vance, they're looking at new practices along with Dr. Bean. And then we've reached out to the community school because we cannot have this to continue. We have to look at it and intervene sooner and not wait till the end of the school year.
Are there any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the reports as read otherwise? Aye. Any opposed? So noted. The next would be, that was unanimous. The next meeting would be actually meeting dates and agenda items. And then we will need to adjourn to executive session, which we will then come back out after executive session to report out. I'm looking for any particular dates. We have the Wellness Subcommittee at 5 o'clock at the Career Tech Room 924. That's on November 16th. December 11th, we have the Liaison Subcommittee with the City Council and the School Committee. That's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at the Public Library. And then on December 12th is the next regular meeting of the School Committee at 6:30 right here at Pell. We also have a 6:15 pre-meeting, which is open to the public. We just go over the agenda, but it's off to the room on the side. Other than that, I don't have anything to report. I'll accept a motion if someone wants to read it for executive session.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move that we recess the regular meeting and convene in executive session under jurisdiction of Rhode Island General Law, Chapter 4642, 46.5, exceptions A1, discussions related to job performance, character or physical or mental health of a person or persons.
Please read the entire
But
thing.
they haven't been notified, have they?
You have to read the whole thing.
Please read the whole thing.
Okay. Provided such person or persons affected shall have been notified in advance in writing and advised that they may require that the discussion be held at an open meeting. In A2, sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, or work sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation.
Heard all that? Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. We will be recessing to executive session, and we will come back out to report out.
Were the police coming? Oh, okay.